Well, 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 look at you. Still standing, still breathing, still moving through this world with something in your chest they have spent years trying to locate, label, and destroy. They have been watching you, every step, every silence, every calculated breath you took when you decided not to react, not to collapse, not to give them the spectacle they were salivating for. They have had their eyes locked on you since the moment they first sensed something in you they couldn't explain, something that made them uncomfortable in their own skin. And do you want to know the most terrifying thing about all of it? They still can't figure you out. After everything. After all of it. After every conversation they dissected, every move they monitored, every version of you they thought they had finally decoded, you remain the single greatest mystery they have ever encountered. They are watching a frequency they don't have the receiver for. They are reading a language their minds were never built to translate. And you are walking through their surveillance like a storm that doesn't know it's destroying everything in its path. They thought watching you closely would give them power over you. What they didn't understand is that the closest they ever got was the moment they sealed their own obsession forever. Before we go any deeper, I need to put something in your hands, something built for exactly the person this script is talking about. The new release is here. Turn rejection into respect, a premium cinematic field manual, Grim Grit Edition 3. This is not a self-help book. This is not soft language wrapped in a pretty cover. This is a field manual, forged for the person who has been dismissed, underestimated, and handed silence when they deserved acknowledgement, and who refuses to stay there. Every page was written with one purpose: to take the thing that was meant to humiliate you and alchemize it into the thing that commands rooms. Rejection is not the end of your story. In the right hands, it is the opening line. Grim Grit Edition 3 is available now. Link is in the description. Go claim it. And if you are serious, if you are truly, completely, no turning back serious about building the kind of interior architecture that no surveillance, no judgment, and no rejection can penetrate, then there is one more thing waiting for you. The complete 4-book bundle. The Joker Doctrine. The Crown of Ash Grim Grit Edition 1. The Quiet Edge Grim Grit Edition 2. And Turn Rejection into Respect Grim Grit Edition 3. 4 manuals, 1 arsenal, all 4 together, at a discounted price for a limited time only. This bundle was not built for everyone. It was built for the person who is done being studied and ready to become the standard. The link is in the description. This offer does not wait, and neither do you. Let's talk about them. Let's really talk about them, because they deserve to be named. Not by face, not by title, but by what they are. They are the ones who pay attention to you in a way that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with hunger. They watch you the way desperate people watch a locked door, convinced that if they stare long enough, something will fall apart, something will crack, something will finally give them access to what they don't have and can't become. They follow your movements without following you. They track your patterns without knowing your purpose. They observe your growth like scientists watching a specimen that keeps refusing to behave according to their expectations. And every time you don't break the way they predicted, every time you rise instead of falling, every time you remain composed when they expected you to shatter, you watch something shift behind their eyes. Not admiration, not respect. Something older and uglier. Something that looks like rage, wrapped in a polite smile. These are not your enemies in the traditional sense. They are not people who want you physically harmed. They want something far more intimate than that. They want to catch you being ordinary. They want to find the flaw in the architecture. They need to find it, because the alternative is accepting something they are not prepared to accept. That you are built differently, that you operate on a different frequency, and that all their watching has only made that more obvious. They constructed an entire observation post around your existence, and they don't even realize how much labor that required. They track what you post. They analyze what you don't post. They notice when you go quiet, and they panic. Because silence from you is louder than noise from anyone else in their universe. They talk to people around you, not to connect with those people, but to gather intelligence on you, like amateur spies who have confused curiosity with strategy. They screenshot, they share, they replay. They sit in rooms with people who don't even know you and describe you like a puzzle that has personally humiliated them by refusing to be solved. They have invested more mental energy into understanding you than they have invested into understanding themselves. And that asymmetry is something they will never say out loud, because to admit it would be to admit the truth. The truth that you live in their head rent-free, not because they hate you, but because they cannot stop being fascinated by you. You are the thing they keep returning to, the unfinished thought, the unanswered question, the variable that refuses to cooperate with their equation. And what is extraordinary, what is almost poetic in its cruelty, is that while they have dedicated entire seasons of their mental life to watching you, you have been busy becoming, busy building, busy evolving into something so far beyond the version they first decided to surveil that by the time they think they've caught up, you're already somewhere else entirely. Here is where it gets interesting. Here is where the real anatomy of this begins to show itself. They see the surface, and they think the surface is the whole story. They see the calm, and they call it coldness. They see the strategy, and they call it manipulation. They see the precision, and they call it arrogance. They are reading a painting by pressing their forehead against it, so close that all they perceive is texture and color, but never the image, never the meaning, never the intention behind every deliberate stroke. You have a depth they are not equipped to measure. You carry a history they were never granted access to. You operate from a place inside yourself that required years of silence, years of loss, years of rebuilding from the inside out. And they want to reduce all of that to a personality trait they can gossip about over coffee. They cannot see the discipline behind your stillness. They cannot see the grief behind your composure. They cannot see the 1,000 times you chose to stay silent when speaking would have destroyed everything, or the 1,000 times you chose to keep moving when stopping felt like the only honest option. They see the result and they mistake it for ease. They see the outcome and they mistake it for luck. They see you surviving and they tell themselves it was circumstances, it was chance, it was anything other than the terrifying truth, which is that you chose this consciously, deliberately, repeatedly. While they were watching, you were deciding. There is a specific kind of person who becomes obsessed with watching someone they cannot decode. They are not evil in the cartoonish sense. They are something more complicated and in some ways more dangerous. They are people who have built their identity around being the one who sees through others, the one who reads rooms, who detects fakeness, who exposes contradictions. Their entire sense of self-worth is tied to their ability to assess, categorize, and file people into neat boxes labeled threat, ally, inferior, irrelevant. And then you arrived. Or rather, they arrived in your orbit, which is a crucial distinction, because they came to you. They came with their instruments and their frameworks and their confidence in their own perceptive abilities, ready to scan you and generate a clean result. And nothing came back clean. Nothing came back categorizable. Every time they thought they had a reading on you, the reading changed. Not because you were inconsistent, but because you are genuinely complex in a way their tools were never designed to handle. This broke something in them, quietly, privately, in a way they couldn't explain to anyone without revealing how much attention they had been paying. So they kept watching, kept analyzing, kept returning to the data set of your life, convinced that eventually the pattern would emerge, convinced that eventually the code would break. What they never considered is that some codes don't break. Some codes were designed to withstand exactly this kind of pressure. Some people were built in a forge so hot that everything that tries to melt them just gets consumed first. There came a moment, and you know the exact moment I'm talking about, when you stopped explaining yourself to them, when you stopped offering context, when you stopped rushing to correct their narratives or defend your character or prove your integrity to an audience that had already decided what verdict to deliver. You went quiet. Not broken quiet. Not defeated quiet. Strategically, devastatingly, architecturally quiet. And that silence did something to them that no argument, no confrontation, no public spectacle ever could have. It made them doubt themselves. Because here is the thing about people who surveil you waiting for a reaction. They need the reaction to confirm their story. The reaction is the proof. If you react, if you collapse, if you plead or explain or rage, they can point to that and say, see how unstable they are. See how guilty they are. See how threatened they are. But when you don't react, when you receive everything they throw and you simply keep moving, their narrative has no evidence. Their story has no ending. Their surveillance has no payoff. And a surveillance operation with no payoff turns inward. The watchers start watching each other, start questioning each other, start wondering whether they were wrong about you from the beginning. And that thought, that single terrifying thought, is more destructive to them than anything you could have said in your own defense. Your silence was not absence. Your silence was a weapon so sophisticated they never saw it coming. Your silence was the loudest thing in every room you were never in. Now let's get to the part they will never understand, no matter how many hours they log watching you. Who you actually are, what you are actually made of. Because here is the reality they have been circling without ever reaching. You are not who they think you are. Not the threat, not the mystery, not the puzzle. You are something far simpler and far more terrifying in your simplicity. You are a person who decided, somewhere in the quiet of your own interior life, that you would be real. That you would be honest about what you are, even when honesty was expensive. That you would carry your contradictions openly, rather than bury them in performance. That you would feel things fully rather than perform numbness for the comfort of people who couldn't handle your depth. This decision, this single, foundational, almost unremarkable decision to be real in a world that rewards performance, made you incomprehensible to people who have built entire identities out of strategic self-presentation. They cannot read you because they are fluent in a language you refuse to speak. They cannot decode you because they are looking for the code that isn't there. There is no algorithm behind your behavior, no ulterior motive behind your kindness, no calculation behind your loyalty. And that is the thing that breaks them, finally and completely. They live in a world where everyone is performing something. Everyone is managing perception. Everyone has an angle, and you simply don't. And a person without an angle, in a world built on angles, is the most disorienting force imaginable. But let's not romanticize this. Let's not pretend that being under this kind of surveillance was painless, or that being misread by people who should have known better didn't leave marks. It cost you something. It cost you seasons of your life that you spent managing the weight of their projections. It cost you relationships you might have had if you hadn't learned to hold people at a careful distance. It cost you the simple freedom of moving through the world without calculating how every move might be misinterpreted, weaponized, or used as evidence in a case being built against you in someone else's mind. You grieved things they never knew you were grieving. You rebuilt things they never knew had been broken. You carried weights they assumed you were immune to because you carried them without making noise. And maybe the cruelest part of all of it is that the very capacity that allowed you to survive their surveillance, your composure, your depth, your refusal to perform weakness for their comfort, was also the thing they used to decide you must not be human, must not feel, must not bleed, must not deserve the basic grace they extend so freely to people who wear their wounds where everyone can see them. They watched you endure and called you unfeeling. They watched you rebuild and called you calculating. They watched you survive and decided it must have been easy, and you let them decide, because you already knew something they didn't. You already knew that what they thought of your survival was not the point. The survival was the point. The becoming was the point, and that was never for their understanding. There is a specific, irreversible moment that happens in the life of every person who has been watched the way you have been watched. A moment when the dynamic flips, when the observed becomes the observer, when the person who was studied becomes the one whose clarity illuminates everything around them, including the people who were holding the microscope. You have either already lived this moment, or you are standing on its threshold right now. And it doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't come with an announcement, or a vindication, or a confrontation. It comes quietly, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, when you look at the people who spent years studying you and you realize you see them completely. Every fear beneath the performance, every wound beneath the aggression, every desperate need beneath the surveillance itself. You see that they were never really watching you. They were searching for something in you that they had lost in themselves. Some confirmation that goodness exists. Some proof that it's possible to be real in a world that punishes realness. Some evidence that the parts of themselves they compromised along the way could still be recovered. They projected their own lost integrity onto you and then resented you for having it. They watched you for the same reason people press their faces against bakery windows when they're starving. Not out of hatred, out of hunger. And once you see this, once you understand what their surveillance was actually about, you stop feeling hunted. You start feeling something else entirely. Something that has no aggression in it, no triumph, no performance of victory. Something that feels almost like pity, followed by peace. Let's talk about the inside. Let's talk about the part of you that has never been on camera, never been subject to their analysis, never been available for their consumption. Let's talk about what actually lives in the architecture of your mind, because it is extraordinary, and they have been looking at the exterior of a cathedral and wondering why the lobby doesn't match their expectations. Your mind does not work the way their minds work. Not because you are superior in some cheap, comparative sense, but because you have been shaped by experiences that required you to develop capacities they were never forced to develop. You learned to sit with discomfort until it became information. You learned to stay in ambiguity long enough to find the truth at its center. You learned that most things worth understanding cannot be understood quickly, and that patience is not passivity but a form of sophisticated engagement with reality. You built an interior life so rich, so textured, so genuinely inhabited that the exterior world, including their surveillance, their judgments, their narratives, passes over you like weather over stone, not because you are numb, but because you are rooted. And what they call mysterious is really just the difference between a person who is genuinely at home in themselves and people who have spent so long managing their external image that they have become strangers to their own interior. They watch you searching for performance. They watch you searching for the mask. They watch you and watch you and watch you. And all they find is a person. Just a real, actual, unreduced person. And that is the thing they will never forgive you for. being real in front of people who forgot how. Let's close the chapter on them, because they deserve exactly this much attention and not a moment more. What happens to people who spend years surveilling someone they cannot decode? What is the long-term cost of that obsession? They become smaller, not in a dramatic, visible way, not in a way that makes headlines or generates sympathy. They become smaller in the way that anything becomes smaller when it invests its energy outward instead of inward. Every hour they spent watching you was an hour they didn't spend building themselves. Every conversation they had about you was a conversation they didn't have about their own growth, their own healing, their own becoming. They chose you as their project instead of choosing themselves. And now they are left with the results of that choice. A life that has not moved meaningfully forward. A sense of purpose that was borrowed from your story instead of authored from their own. And a creeping awareness that the person they were surveilling has become something they can no longer track, because they are so far beyond the version they originally filed under their judgment. They cannot reach you now, not because you built walls, but because you kept moving and they stood still. Not because you became cruel, but because you kept becoming and they stopped. The surveillance continues, probably. The watching probably never fully stops, but it has changed in quality. What was once predatory has become something else, something smaller, something that looks, if you squint, almost like longing. Here is the part nobody talks about. Here is the thing that only becomes visible from this far down the road, only becomes clear when enough time and enough distance have accumulated to allow you to look back without flinching. They gave you something. These watchers, these analysts, these people who turned your life into their case study, they gave you something irreplaceable, something you could not have purchased and could not have engineered and could not have received from anyone who loved you too easily. They gave you the pressure that made you into what you are. Every time they watched and waited for you to crack, you chose not to crack. Every time they analyzed and waited for you to reveal some hidden ugliness, you discovered instead a hidden strength. Every time they constructed a narrative designed to minimize you, you were forced to know yourself more precisely, more completely, more honestly than comfortable people with comfortable lives ever have to know themselves. They were the resistance that built the muscle. They were the cold that taught you to generate your own heat. They were the doubt that forced you to become unshakable in your own conviction. And none of this was their intention. None of this was in their plan. They watched you trying to reduce you and accidentally contributed to your expansion. They surveilled you trying to find your limit and accidentally pushed you past limits you didn't know you had. They tried to break you and instead participated in your construction. There is something almost magnificent about the irony of that, something worth acknowledging, even if only in the privacy of your own mind. They worked so hard against you, and every single thing they built against you, you built into yourself. So who are you now? Now, today, at this precise moment in your story, still under their gaze, still moving through a world where people are observing you and trying to categorize you and failing repeatedly and spectacularly. You are someone who has been tested at a depth most people never experience. You have been examined under conditions most people never face, and you have come back from those examinations not diminished but clarified. The things that were never real about you have been burned away. The performances, the people-pleasing, the apologetic diminishing of your own reality to make smaller people comfortable. Gone. What remains is the actual you, the original you, the version that existed before you learned to manage other people's perceptions of you, the version that was always sufficient, always real, always worth the full dignity of being known rather than just observed. And there is a power in this that their surveillance has actually, accidentally refined. Because every time someone tried to reduce you and failed, you learned something new about what you cannot be reduced to. Every time someone tried to define you by your worst moment, and you outlasted that definition, you learned something